Is anybody else recovering here today? Yeah. Has anybody woke up this morning and admitted to themselves that they're powerless over their addiction, that their life has become unmanageable? Okay, I'm in the right place. Just checking. Harold runs up with this little sign, 8:55, 8:55. Yeah, right, Harold. I'll put my watch here, so that it dropped. It stopped. Oh no. Well, I'll just, wing it. First thing I want to do is I really want to thank the convention committee for asking me to come here tonight and to participate in this convention, to share my experience, strength, and hope with you guys. This is kind of strange because for the last 5 years I've been working on the committee as far as chairing registration, and this is my first San Diego convention not working, and it's different. I just want to thank him for that. And also what I'd like to do is I'd like to personally thank a man named Jimmy Kennan, and I want to thank him. Yeah, you can clap. I want to thank him personally for his courage and for his insight as far as knowing inside that he needed to start a fellowship for addicts to be able to relate to other addicts. And for that I am truly, truly grateful. I was born and raised in a place not here like Linnea. I was born in a place about 3,000 miles from here called New Jersey. Yeah. And I spent the first 28 years of my life there. And at the age of like 13 and 14 and 15, it was real cool to escape ourselves, to escape everyday living, and to do things like sniffing glue and seeing who could get the most bottles of Robitussin AC at the drugstores, and who could go over and get Tunanols and Sucanols and Nebutols, and who could get the highest and not get caught, and things like that. And hi. It's funny that this week I was like, I was like nervous. My head was going crazy, and I was really nervous, and I called my parents in New Jersey. I think it was like Tuesday, and I said, God, Dad, you know what? Say a prayer for me Friday night, 10:30 your time. I'm going to be in this meeting, and I'm going to be sharing in front of all these people in a convention, Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm really nervous, and I'm really scared. And he goes, you're nervous? And I go, yeah. And he says, well, what are you nervous about? I said, well, say a prayer for me that I do all right. He says, say a prayer for you. I'll say a prayer that they can get you off the stage in time to start the convention. So my father knows me, Oh, man. Anyhow, at about the age of 18 years old, what happened to me, and I don't know why it happened, and I really don't give a shit why it happened, but my life became centered around the getting and the using and the finding ways and means to get more drugs. And it was a good time. I felt I was growing up in a time that, I wouldn't trade it for anything else in the world. It was the 60s, and the Beatles were in, and people were growing their hair real long, and I was a part of it. And it was just a real, what I thought at the time, a free expression of life, and drugs had really become in, and I felt the unity. I felt the unity with my friends. I felt a common bond with my friends, and it felt really good for me to feel a part of something, because all my life I had this undercurrent of self-centered fear. I don't know where it came from. I don't really care where it came from. But what happened was, when I found drugs and I started to put things in my body, that fear started to subside. And we talk about in our NA basic text that the 12 steps are a way to ease the pain of living through spiritual principles. And I don't know about anybody else in this room, but when I found drugs, man, it eased the pain of living. I got a lot of relief out of altering my mood. You know, I'm standing up here, man, my throat is real dry, and my armpits are sweating, you know, and my palms are real sweaty, and my mind is like going a million miles an hour, and it's like I'm thinking, like, now I know what these tweakers are all about, man. Now I know what they live and breathe for. Feeling like I feel right now. Right, gang? Oh. You know, in 1977, I was arrested by the New Jersey State Narcotics Strike Force at work and lost a 9.5-year career, got a 5-year suspended sentence to Rahway State Prison, and asked my aunt and uncle in San Diego, California, if I could come out and start my life all over again. And I really was sincere about that. And they said, yeah, that they were willing to help me. And I drove out here with about $1,600 to my name, a little 1975 B210 Datsun, a stereo, and just filled with fears. Yeah, Barbara, you remember that car. I sold it to Barbara. Hell of a car, huh, Barb? And I really, really had sincere desires, and my intent was to start all over again, to start my life anew, to get away from my friends, to get away from the environment that I lived in for so long, and to stop using drugs and stop having the bad things that happened to me over and over and over again. You know, I've been arrested, 7 or 8 different times. I've been in hospitals 5 or 6 different times. I've had 3 major car accidents that I never walked away from, 1 motorcycle accident, all directly related to drugs and alcohol. You know, I have never been in a hospital yet for like a normal reason, you know. I always wind up in emergency rooms because of a drug overdose, or, oh, he fell off of this and cracked this open, or, oh, he's got endocarditis from a dirty outfit and he's going to have to stay here a while. And, you know, it took a long time for the fact to set into my mind that, Ron, you know what? You are powerless over this thing they call addiction in Narcotics Anonymous. And because you're powerless over it, your life is unmanageable. I came to Narcotics Anonymous, hung around the meetings, went through different treatment rooms, went through different recovery facilities for almost 2 years. And I could not sustain any abstinence. And there's a real powerful message in our book. And it's one of my favorite lines, and it says that once we arrest the disease of addiction, in other words, once we stop using, recovery is then possible. It doesn't say that once Ron stopped using, he's recovering. And what happened to me is that the pain of living without drugs, even though I was going to meetings, and the anxiety that surrounded that got me to use again. I mean, the obsession and compulsion was so strong in me. That's all I knew most of my life. Everything I did was centered around drugs. I never had any meaningful relationships because the main meaningful relationship I had was with narcotics. At the age of around 19 years old, I was going through a 5-year breakup of a relationship, and it hurt so bad. I can remember going to work and just being sick to my stomach, can't eat, wanting to vomit, and none of the drugs that I was using was helping this. And I found heroin. And at that time in New Jersey, or actually in Harlem, you'd go over to cop a bag of heroin, and for $3 you could get what they call a tray bag, little $3 glassine envelope. And me and my buddies would split that up and snort like $1's worth and get really, really high. And I started to get some relief from the feelings that I was feeling at the time. And that clicked into my mind and started an obsession and a compulsion that almost killed me. Because at the age of 33 years old, after going in and out of the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous for a while, I wound up in a hospital over here in Point Loma on the 8th floor with an infection from a dirty needle. And I had bacterial endocarditis of the heart valves, and I had osteomyelitis of the 2 top ribs, and I had kidney failure, and I had pneumonia in 1 lung, and I had septicemia of the blood system, and I had 105 fever, and I didn't think that I was going to live. and they put me on all these machines. And after being on these machines for 2 weeks, the doctors came into my room and they said, Ron, it looks like we've got this thing arrested, but you're going to have to spend 8 weeks on these machines in this hospital. And we want you to know how serious this is, because nobody spends 8 weeks in hospitals anymore. We've got people with cancer that we move out sooner than that. You're a very sick gentleman. If you ever put a needle in your arm again, you'll reinfect yourself, and you'll probably die next time. And I believed every word that doctor said. And I want to talk about the second step right here, because what followed was the thing that happened in my life over and over and over again. As soon as the doctor left my room, my head wanted some relief. I shoot heroin for relief. And one more time I said, well, you know what? There's nurses outside. I mean, you're hooked up to all these machines. I mean, what safer place could you have to use than here? And I immediately got on the telephone, called my connection, and he started bringing me drugs to the hospital. Folks, that's what had happened to me over and over again, through all the car accidents, through the losing of jobs, through the breaking up of relationships, through the hurting of myself and other people, through God trying to get my attention for years. My mind always rationalized and justified the next fix, pill, drink, joint, whatever. When I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, the first thing that I had to totally accept in my life was that when it came to drugs, I was insane. That there wasn't a doubt in my mind that I was insane. What I came to believe in was the power of Narcotics Anonymous, was the fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, was what you people said when you shared from your heart and you talked about what you were going through one day and that you weren't using, and that you were allowing yourself to feel, and that you were afraid, and maybe you felt some shame, and maybe there was a lot of things from the past haunting you, but you were willing not to use that day and to talk about it and to recover. It gave me a lot of hope. A lot of hope. When I was in this hospital, after about a week and a half of shooting dope every day, you people came to that room and you looked at me. And I remember Phil coming to that room and looking at me and despair in his eyes. And yeah, I'm on this breather machine. I've got pneumonia and I'm smoking one of my Moors. I'm puffing away, and old Phil walks in. Hey, homie, what's happening? And he just looked at me, and he was real honest. He said, Ron, you know what? I love you, I care about you, but I can't come here anymore and watch you die. So I'll put flowers on your grave, but I won't be a part of this anymore. Goodbye. And he left. And I can't tell you the impact that had on me, because it started to clear my mind to my reality. I started to understand that no matter what I tried to do from that day on, I could never again successfully use drugs on this planet. And it hurt. And I felt like I lost my best friend. And I cried, and I sobbed, and I was scared. And I started to reach out. I went to a recovery house in Pasadena. It was suggested strongly that I go there. A very strict recovery house, which was all about the principles of Narcotics Anonymous, and about recovery, and about getting you to look at yourself and trying to move the healing process of the 12 steps in a person. I took the third step in this recovery house, and when I made a decision to turn my will and my lives over to the care of God as I understood Him, what I was really doing is I was turning my will and life over to the care of this program and trusting. For the first time that I could ever remember, I was up against the wall, and it was so serious that I had to take a chance and trust. How could I trust anybody? I couldn't even trust myself. For years, I had been screwing over people, lying to people, telling myself and other people, this can't go on, I'm gonna stop, you'll see. And then the next day, using drugs all over again. It was real important for me to take the third step and to begin trusting the program and the process of Narcotics Anonymous. And if you people didn't bare your souls and be honest like you are in the meetings, I don't know if I ever would have got that trust. You see, the fear of death isn't enough to stop me from using. I proved that to myself. You know, when I did an inventory, I heard a guy say one time in a meeting, I never heard of anyone who relapsed working the step. The last time, July of 1982, I relapsed, I was sitting in the backyard with a pen and pencil in my hand and ready to do my inventory, and I started looking at myself and I said, you gotta be kidding me. There's no way I'm gonna write this stuff down on paper and then I'm gonna go tell it to someone else? I'm getting loaded. So, if you've ever heard that myth, it's not true. Right, Phil? Anyhow, I was told that there's 3 areas of my life as an addict that will kill me. And I've got to start making peace with them. And that was resentments, that was fears, and that was my sexual relations with others. And if I didn't start to look at it and have a power greater than myself come into my life and start to work in my life, that I would surely get loaded again. And I believed you people. And the reason I believed you people is because I was tired and afraid, and I didn't want to use anymore. And I was done. When I did a 5th step, it took a lot of courage, something that I've never had. I've been a coward all my life. I mean, I'm such a coward that at the end I couldn't go one day facing life without using drugs. Not one day. Through the program of Narcotics Anonymous and the 12 steps and a power greater than myself, I'm not a coward today. I'm not a coward today. And the beginning of that process was in the 5th step for me, when I was able to share with another human being what I was all about for many, many years. All the secrets that I swore I'd never tell anybody, the things that I was ashamed of, the things that lurked over me like a cloud. When I got into step 6 and I started to list my character defects, it became real evident to me. And I heard a man who, God rest his soul, he helped me a lot in my recovery. His name was Pepe. And he used to talk about fear, and he used to talk about love. And every character defect that I have is a direct result or an indirect result of fear. And like I said earlier on, prior to ever using, and way prior to recovery, I always had an undercurrent of self-centered fear. Either I'm not going to get what I want, or I'm going to lose something that I think I already have. And it created discomfort in me. And like I said before, I used drugs for relief. One of the things that became evident to me in steps 6 and 7 was that even though I was powerless over my feelings and powerless over my thoughts, and I tell you what, I've sat in NA meetings and thought some real weird stuff. And I'll sit there smiling to myself going, if they knew that I was thinking this right now, they'd throw me the hell out of here. I mean, really weird stuff, okay? And what I've come to believe and understand in step 6 and 7, that I'm powerless over my thinking or what comes into my mind. I'm powerless over my emotions and what I feel. But you know what, folks? The lie is dead, because I ain't powerless over my actions. And you people taught me that. You people taught me that. Narcotics Anonymous is a spiritual solution. It's a spiritual program of action. A solution to the disease of addiction. A program of action. I remember sitting in this recovery house about 30 days clean. I mean, I had almost just died. I just lost a career. My whole life was in shambles. I didn't have a pot to piss in. And I'm telling this counselor, I really want to get clean this time, and you watch. You watch. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get a sponsor. And I go, shut up! And I got scared. I go, huh? He goes, Ron, you've been telling people these things all your life. I don't want to hear what you're going to do. I don't want to hear how grateful you are to be at this recovery house. Because you see, your actions are going to show me. Your actions are going to show me how sincere you are about your own recovery. You know, he was right. You know, we talk about gratitude, and gratitude to me is an action, you know. I like to watch people. I've been told that it's not a program of talking. It's not a program of thinking. It's a program of doing. You know, there's been times in my recovery that I've thought about using, but I haven't used. There's been times in my recovery when I've really wanted to physically hurt someone, but I didn't do it. Because you see, I'm not powerless over my actions. You people taught me that. Step 8 and 9, step 9 especially, I had a lot of wreckage. I wrote it out under the guidance of my sponsor at that time. And I don't know exactly when, but in step 9, something changed for me. Up until step 9, I was more or less fear motivated to recover. Fear motivated to do the things you people told me to do. And somewhere in the amends process, I started to get this overwhelming feeling that, you know what, Ron, you're okay. And you know what, Ron, you're on the right road. And things are going to work out. I really started to feel that in my 9th step. The 10th step is a real freedom step for myself, because it gives me a freedom that I never had prior to recovery. And that's the freedom to admit to you that I'm wrong. That I'm wrong. And that I don't know everything. And that I don't have to come up with all the answers. It gives me a way to monitor myself. You know, we say in the beginning of the 12 traditions, we state that we keep what we have only, not maybe or kinda, but only with vigilance. That's a watchful eye. That's checking myself out. That's being able to talk to somebody else about what's really going on inside of me. Taking a risk. I don't trust everybody in Narcotics Anonymous. And it's okay, because I don't have to. Because you see, I've got about 5 or 6 people in my life that I trust. That I dearly trust. If you're new and you're in this room, welcome. Number 1, welcome. If you want a new way to live and you haven't been able to find it on your own, welcome. Please don't go away. And if there was one thing I'd have to suggest to anyone who's new here, it's not to jump into the steps. It's not to go bananas on all these other things. It's to find somebody in this program that you can relate to and that you can learn to trust, because your life depends on it. You know, on the 11th step, I hear a lot of people go, well, I'm working the spiritual part of the program. I thought the whole program was spiritual. The spiritual part, I've seen people, and myself included, I know this thing's been talking to me at times, and the 11th step says that we seek through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, whatever that is, praying only, and it's real exact about this, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us or me, and for the power to carry that out. And I have suffered under praying for what I think I should have, and then wishing I never had it, and then begging to get rid of it, and then going back to the first step again. You know, I can never go wrong when I pray for the knowledge of God's will for me and for the power to carry that out, because it's out of my hands. And I believe that my God wants the best for me. And a lot of times my perception of what's best for me isn't what's best for me. So it's real important that I practice that step properly. I got to remember something. For me, if I want to jump off into some religion, and I have nothing against religion. I think religions are great, and I think anything that can support a person in their spiritual growth is wonderful. But if I'm going to jump off into something else and forget that there's 11 other steps, I'm in trouble. Because you see, I'm an addict. And if I'm not practicing this way of life, guess what happens? I go back to my way of life. And guess what happens when I go back to my way of life? Yep. I get high. The 12 step says that having had a spiritual awakening, not if you get one, or the lucky people that do, it's having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry the message. But it says that I have to practice these principles in my affair. And what it doesn't go on to say is if you don't, Ronnie G., practice these principles in all your affair, you're going to get real ill. I remember a long time ago, a guy named Stu from this recovery house said to me, you know what? Let somebody mess around with your money or your old lady, and then we'll see what kind of program you got, punk. And it was like, huh? Huh? Well, I found out what he meant. Took about 4 years later, but I found out what he meant. Well, I don't want Harold to get mad at me. I feel really honored and privileged and blessed to be standing here. If you would have told me 7 years ago that, you know what, Ron, the day is going to come when you're going to feel as good as you feel about yourself, that you're going to have peace and harmony in your life, that you're going to experience and feel love for other people and get that back, that you're going to find a way to live and to help other human beings find that same way, I just couldn't have fathomed it. I really couldn't. I really, really couldn't have fathomed it. I can honestly say that my life today is better than it's ever been, ever. I was driving here about 11:45 today, and I was on Highway 94 going past the methadone clinic. And I looked over, and I remembered there was a morning when my parents came out from New Jersey in 1981, and things were real bad in my life, and I was real sick. And I was going to the clinic one morning about 6 o'clock in the morning, and my father asked me if he could go with me. And I said, yeah, Dad. And he got in the car, and we drove to C Street Clinic. And I can remember pulling up, and it was still dark, and that light was shining out of that front door. And I said, I'll be right back, And I ran in, I got my dose, and I came back, and my father was sobbing. And he says, when you were a little boy, I never dreamed that this would happen to you. And he couldn't stop sobbing. And I remember I said to him that day out of my guilt, you know what, Dad? The day will come, you'll see. You'll be proud of me, Dad. The day will come, you'll be proud of me. And when I was 2 years clean, my family came out from New Jersey to visit me. And they all stayed in the house together. Excuse me. And everybody was yapping like they always do in the Gonzalez family. And my dad was sitting in his chair, and he was reading this Narcotics Anonymous basic text. And he'd look up at me, and he'd just read. And my mother would talk, and he'd look up at me, and he'd just read. And finally I said, Dad, what's going on? You've got this look on your face, And he said, you know what, Ronnie? He says, your mother and your sister and your brother, they watch all these shows on TV and all these religious shows and these guys talking about miracles and performing miracles. And he says, you know what, I'm 70 years old. And I've seen a miracle. I love recovery. I don't always like my life. I don't always like the things that I feel inside. And I don't always like the things I have to do. But I love recovery. And I want to thank the convention committee one more time for asking me to be a part of this convention. I feel really honored. I feel really blessed. Because since I moved out here from New Jersey, I've got a lot of friends that'll never get the chance to sit in a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. And I just want to say one more thing. That when we're talking to each other, and that we're looking at each other, and we're in a meeting setting trying to help each other, we've got to remember, man, that if we don't help each other to recover, we're all going to die alone. Thank you.